The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of the royal residence as Charles stood by the window of his private study. His fingers trembled slightly as he held the medical report that had arrived just days ago. The words seemed to blur on the page, but their meaning remained crystal clear. Cancer, the diagnosis that millions face every year, had now become his personal battle. For weeks, Charles had kept this burden to himself, sharing it only with his closest family members and medical team. The weight of the secret pressed heavily upon his shoulders, not because he feared for himself, but because he understood the impact this news would have on the nation he had dedicated his life to serving. The decision to go public had not come easily. Night after night, he had wrestled with the question of whether to share this deeply personal struggle with the world. His advisors had presented compelling arguments on both sides. Some urged him to maintain privacy, arguing that his health was a personal matter. Others believed that transparency would strengthen the bond between him and the people he served. It was during a quiet conversation with his wife that clarity finally came. She had taken his hand gently and reminded him of all the times throughout history when leaders had shown their vulnerability and, in doing so, had given strength to others facing similar battles. Her words echoed in his mind as he prepared for what would be one of the most significant announcements of his life. The communications team had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment. Every word of his statement had been carefully considered, not to manipulate or control the narrative, but to ensure that his message would reach people's hearts with the sincerity and hope he intended to convey. Charles insisted that the message be authentic, refusing to hide behind carefully crafted political speak. As he reviewed the final draft of his statement, memories flooded back of all the cancer patients he had met throughout his years of public service. He remembered Mary, a young mother of 3 who had faced her diagnosis with remarkable courage. He thought of James, an elderly veteran who had fought cancer with the same determination he had shown in service to his country. These faces, these stories, had shaped his understanding of what it meant to face this disease. The medical team had been thorough in their explanations. Dr. Harrison, his primary oncologist, had spent hours explaining the treatment options, the prognosis, and what to expect in the coming months. The cancer had been caught early, which was encouraging, but the road ahead would not be easy. There would be treatments that would test his strength, days when he would feel overwhelmed, and moments when the weight of it all would seem too much to bear. Charles had always been known for his dedication to duty. Throughout his life, he had put service above self, attending countless engagements, supporting numerous charities, and working tirelessly for causes close to his heart. Now he faced a different kind of duty, the duty to be honest with those who looked to him for leadership and inspiration. The preparation for the announcement involved more than just words. Charles wanted to ensure that his message would be accompanied by concrete actions. He instructed his team to compile resources for cancer patients and their families to highlight the incredible work being done by cancer research organizations, and to use this moment as an opportunity to bring attention to the importance of early detection and regular health checkups. His children had each responded to the news in their own way. Some had immediately sprung into action, researching treatment options and connecting with leading specialists around the world. Others had simply offered their presence, understanding that sometimes the greatest comfort comes from knowing you are not alone. The family had grown closer through this challenge, setting aside any differences to rally around their father. The palace staff, many of whom had served the family for decades, sensed that something significant was happening. Their discretion and professionalism during this time touched Charles deeply. He noticed the small gestures of support, a favorite tea appearing without request, fresh flowers placed daily in his study, the gentle inquiries about his well-being that never pressed too hard. As the day of the announcement approached, Charles spent time in reflection. He walked through the gardens that had provided solace throughout his life, finding peace in the enduring beauty of nature. The ancient trees that had witnessed generations of his family's history stood as silent sentinels, reminding him that life continues its cycle regardless of individual struggles. He thought about legacy, not in terms of monuments or historical records, but in the impact one life can have on others. If his openness about his diagnosis could help even one person feel less alone in their fight, if it could encourage someone to seek medical attention they had been postponing, then sharing this personal challenge would be worthwhile. The speechwriters had presented him with various drafts, each attempting to strike the right balance between gravity and hope. Charles rejected anything that felt inauthentic or overly polished. He wanted his words to come from the heart, to reflect the genuine emotions he was experiencing. The fear, yes, but also the determination, the gratitude for modern medicine, and the deep appreciation for the support he had already received. He consulted with leaders from various faith communities, seeking spiritual guidance as he prepared to face this challenge. Their wisdom reminded him that strength often comes from acknowledging weakness, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. These conversations enriched his understanding of what he was about to do. The reaction of his grandchildren had been particularly poignant. Their innocent questions and unconditional love had provided moments of light during dark days. One had drawn him a picture of them together, with the words, "You're the bravest grandpa in the world," written in colorful crayon. Another had researched foods that could help during treatment, proudly presenting a list of superhero foods that would make him strong. Charles also spent time reviewing the work of cancer charities he had supported over the years. He wanted to ensure that his announcement would shine a light on their crucial work. He spoke with researchers who were on the brink of breakthrough treatments, with nurses who provided compassionate care, with volunteers who offered comfort to patients and families. Their dedication reinforced his decision to be open about his journey. The international response was something else to consider. Leaders from around the world would be watching, and his words would be translated into dozens of languages. He wanted his message to transcend cultural boundaries, to speak to the universal human experience of facing health challenges. He consulted with cultural advisors to ensure his words would resonate globally. As he prepared his final remarks, Charles thought about the millions of people around the world who face cancer diagnoses every day. Many do so without the resources and support available to him. This awareness humbled him and strengthened his resolve to use his platform to advocate for better cancer care for all, regardless of their circumstances. The logistics of the announcement were complex. The timing had to be carefully coordinated to ensure maximum reach while respecting the news cycle. The Palace Communications team worked with media outlets to ensure accurate reporting. Medical experts were briefed and made available to provide context and answer questions that would inevitably arise. Charles insisted on reviewing every aspect of the announcement plan. He wanted to ensure that cancer support hotlines were prepared for an increase in calls, that cancer charities were ready to handle increased interest, and that accurate medical information would be readily available to those who sought it. This wasn't just about his story. It was about connecting people with the help they might need. The night before the announcement, Charles found it difficult to sleep. He spent hours at his desk, making final adjustments to his statement. Each word carried weight. Each phrase had been chosen with care. He wanted to strike the right tone, serious enough to acknowledge the gravity of the situation, but hopeful enough to inspire rather than alarm. He received messages of support from unexpected quarters. Former colleagues, distant relatives, people whose lives had been touched by his work over the years reached out through various channels. Their words of encouragement reminded him of the connections that bind humanity together, especially in times of trial. The morning of the announcement arrived with typical British weather, overcast skies that occasionally parted to reveal glimpses of sun. Charles saw it as a metaphor for the journey ahead. There would be cloudy days, but the sun would always be there, waiting to break through. As he dressed for the announcement, Charles paid attention to every detail. He chose a tie given to him by his grandchildren, a subtle reminder of what truly mattered. He ensured his appearance conveyed strength and resolve while acknowledging the seriousness of the situation. Every element had been considered to send a right message. The final preparations were underway. The camera crew made their adjustments, the lighting was perfected, and the backdrop chosen to convey warmth and accessibility. Charles took a moment to center himself, drawing on decades of public speaking experience while acknowledging that this was unlike any address he had given before. He thought of his parents and grandparents, drawing strength from their examples of duty and service. They had faced their own challenges with dignity and grace, setting a standard he hoped to uphold. Their portraits, hanging in the hallways of the residence, seemed to offer silent encouragement. The medical team provided a final briefing, ensuring Charles had the most up-to-date information about his condition and treatment plan. They would be standing by to provide additional information to the media and public health officials following the announcement. Their professionalism and compassion had been a source of comfort throughout this journey. Charles spent a few moments in private prayer, seeking guidance and strength for what lay ahead. He prayed not just for himself, but for all those facing similar battles. He asked for the wisdom to use this platform responsibly and the courage to be truly vulnerable in service of others. The final countdown began. In minutes, his words would reach millions of people around the world. Some would be shocked, others saddened, but Charles hoped that many would find inspiration in his openness. He straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and prepared to step into the light. The significance of this moment was not lost on him. Throughout history, leaders had hidden their health challenges, fearing it would be seen as weakness. But times had changed, and Charles believed that authentic leadership meant being honest about the full spectrum of human experience, including vulnerability and struggle. As he walked toward the room where he would deliver his address, Charles felt a strange sense of peace. The decision had been made, the words prepared, and now all that remained was to speak from the heart. He knew that this announcement would change things, but he also believed it was the right thing to do. The journey that had led to this moment had been intensely personal, but its impact would be public. Charles understood that by sharing his story, he was inviting millions into a very private space. Yet he believed that in our shared humanity, in our common struggles and hopes, lay the potential for profound connection and mutual support. The technical team gave the final signals. In moments, the cameras would roll, and Charles would break his silence about his cancer diagnosis. He took one last deep breath, thought of all those who had faced this disease with courage, and prepared to add his voice to theirs. This was not just his story. It was a story shared by millions around the world, and he was honored to be able to shed light on their struggles through his own. The red light on the camera glowed steadily as Charles settled into his chair. The familiar setting of the blue drawing room had been chosen carefully, its warmth and history providing a sense of continuity and stability. Through the tall windows behind him, the gardens stretched out, a reminder of life's enduring beauty even in challenging times. Charles cleared his throat softly and began to speak. His voice, known to millions around the world, carried its usual measured tone, but there was something different, a vulnerability that made his words even more powerful. He began by thanking people for their continued support and expressing his deep connection to the nation he served. The words flowed with practiced ease, yet each one carried genuine emotion. He spoke of receiving the diagnosis, describing the moment with honesty that cut through any pretense. He explained how the news had initially left him stunned, how he had needed time to process what it meant for himself and his family. His hands, usually so steady during public addresses, showed the slightest tremor as he spoke of telling his loved ones. He carefully explained the type of cancer he was facing, using language that was accessible without being overly simplified. He had worked closely with his medical team to ensure accuracy while avoiding unnecessary alarm. He spoke of the treatment plan that had been developed, emphasizing the expertise and dedication of his healthcare providers. What struck viewers most was his acknowledgement of fear. Charles, who had always projected strength and stability, admitted to moments of uncertainty and worry. He spoke of sleepless nights and difficult questions, of grappling with mortality in a way that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. This honesty created an immediate connection with viewers who had faced similar fears. He then shifted to speak about hope. His voice grew stronger as he discussed advances in cancer treatment, the incredible progress made by researchers, and the success stories he had learned about. He mentioned specific breakthroughs without making promises, balancing optimism with realism in a way that respected his audience's intelligence. Charles paid tribute to the cancer patients he had met throughout his years of public service. He spoke of their courage, their humor in the face of adversity, and the lessons they had taught him about resilience. He mentioned several by name, having secured permission from them or their families beforehand, ensuring their stories would inspire others. The address took an unexpected turn when Charles spoke directly to those currently battling cancer. His words were carefully chosen to provide comfort without minimizing their struggles. He acknowledged the difficulty of treatment, the emotional toll on families, and the financial pressures many face. He positioned himself not as someone speaking from a position of privilege, but as a fellow traveler on a difficult journey. He announced new initiatives to support cancer research and patient care. These weren't vague promises, but concrete commitments developed in consultation with leading cancer organizations. He outlined plans for increased funding, better access to cutting-edge treatments, and support programs for families affected by cancer. Each initiative had been carefully planned to ensure it would make a real difference. Charles addressed the elephant in the room, his ability to continue his duties while undergoing treatment. He assured the nation that he had excellent medical care and would adjust his schedule as needed, always putting his health first while maintaining his commitment to service. He emphasized that seeking treatment and taking necessary rest was not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. The most moving part of his address came when he spoke about his family. His voice softened as he expressed gratitude for their support, particularly his wife's steadfast presence. He spoke of how his children had rallied around him, how his grandchildren's innocent joy provided daily reminders of what truly mattered. Without breaching their privacy, he painted a picture of a family united in love and determination. He used his platform to encourage early detection and regular health screenings. Drawing on statistics provided by his medical team, he emphasized how early detection had improved his own prognosis and could save countless lives. He urged viewers to not delay seeking medical attention, to listen to their bodies, and to prioritize their health. Charles also addressed the mental health aspects of a cancer diagnosis. He spoke candidly about the importance of psychological support, mentioning the counselors who had helped him process his emotions. He worked to destigmatize seeking mental health support during health crises, emphasizing that taking care of one's emotional well-being was as important as treating the physical disease. The international dimension of his message was carefully considered. Charles acknowledged messages of support received from leaders and citizens around the world. He spoke of cancer as a universal challenge that transcends borders, calling for increased international cooperation in research and treatment development. He announced partnerships with cancer organizations globally, initiatives that would share knowledge and resources across nations. These partnerships had been months in the planning, but were accelerated by his diagnosis. He emphasized that cancer research breakthroughs in one country could save lives everywhere, making international cooperation essential. Charles addressed the healthcare workers directly, expressing profound gratitude for their dedication. He spoke of the nurses who provided care with compassion, the researchers working tirelessly for breakthroughs, the support staff who made treatment possible. He announced new programs to recognize and support these healthcare heroes, understanding that they were the backbone of cancer care. The economic impact of cancer on families was not ignored. Charles spoke of the financial burden that often accompanies a cancer diagnosis: lost wages, treatment costs, travel expenses for care. He announced new charitable initiatives to provide financial support to families struggling with these costs, funded by a combination of royal patronage and private donations. He addressed employers and colleagues of cancer patients, urging understanding and flexibility. He spoke of the importance of maintaining normalcy where possible, of the value of work in providing purpose and routine during treatment. He called on businesses to review their policies to better support employees facing health challenges. Charles shared insights from his medical team about living with cancer. He emphasized that a diagnosis didn't mean life stopped, that many people lived full, productive lives while managing their condition. He spoke of adapting to a new normal, finding joy in daily activities, and maintaining hope for the future. The role of faith in his journey was addressed with sensitivity. Charles, always respectful of diverse beliefs, spoke of how his own spiritual practices had provided comfort. He acknowledged that people find strength in different ways, through faith, philosophy, nature, or human connection, and encouraged everyone to draw on whatever sources of strength resonated with them. He announced plans for a series of public forums on cancer awareness and treatment. These wouldn't be typical royal patronage events, but interactive sessions where patients, families, researchers, and healthcare providers could share experiences and knowledge. He committed to participating personally when his treatment schedule allowed. Charles addressed young people specifically, knowing that cancer in a public figure could be particularly frightening for children and teenagers. His words were carefully crafted to be honest, but not alarming, emphasizing that cancer was a disease that could be treated and often overcome. He announced educational initiatives to help young people understand cancer better and reduce fear through knowledge. The environmental factors in cancer were discussed with his characteristic passion for environmental causes. Charles spoke of the importance of clean air, water, and food in cancer prevention. He announced new research initiatives examining environmental causes of cancer, combining his long-standing environmental advocacy with his new role as a cancer patient. He addressed the media directly, asking for responsible reporting that would inform without sensationalizing. He requested respect for his family's privacy while committing to regular updates on his condition. He emphasized that while he was sharing his journey, every cancer patient deserved to make their own choices about privacy. Charles spoke about the importance of maintaining routine and finding joy during treatment. He shared small details, how he continued to tend his garden when energy allowed, how he found solace in reading, how video calls with grandchildren brightened difficult days. These personal touches made his experience relatable and provided practical ideas for others facing similar challenges. The announcement included details about new research funding specifically targeted at the type of cancer Charles was facing. However, he emphasized that all cancer research was interconnected, that breakthroughs in one area often led to advances in others. He called for a holistic approach to cancer research that would benefit all patients. He addressed the topic of alternative and complementary therapies with balance and wisdom. While emphasizing the importance of evidence-based medical treatment, he acknowledged that many patients found comfort in complementary approaches. He announced funding for research into integrative cancer care that would study how traditional medicine and complementary therapies could work together. Charles spoke about the importance of caregivers, acknowledging the often overlooked burden on those who support cancer patients. He announced new support programs for caregivers, including respite care, counseling services, and practical support. He emphasized that caring for the caregivers was essential for comprehensive cancer care. The global inequality in cancer treatment was addressed with characteristic directness. Charles acknowledged his privileged position in accessing excellent care and used it to highlight the millions who lack such access. He announced initiatives to improve cancer care in developing nations, including equipment donations, training programs, and knowledge sharing. He shared his experience with the side effects of treatment, normalizing the struggles many patients face. Without dwelling on difficulties, he acknowledged fatigue, changes in appetite, and other challenges. He emphasized that experiencing side effects didn't mean weakness, and that communicating openly with healthcare providers was crucial. Charles announced plans for a comprehensive review of cancer services in the nation, working with government and healthcare leaders to identify gaps and improvements. This wouldn't be a token gesture, but a serious examination aimed at improving outcomes for all cancer patients, regardless of their circumstances. The importance of clinical trials was emphasized, with Charles sharing his own participation in research protocols. He encouraged others to consider clinical trials, explaining how they advance treatment while potentially providing access to cutting-edge therapies. He announced new initiatives to make clinical trial information more accessible to patients. He addressed the workplace discrimination sometimes faced by cancer patients and survivors. Charles called on employers to see cancer survivors as examples of strength and resilience, not liability. He announced partnerships with business leaders to promote inclusive practices and support for employees affected by cancer. The technological advances in cancer treatment were highlighted with enthusiasm. Charles spoke of precision medicine, immunotherapy, and other breakthroughs with genuine excitement. He announced technology initiatives to make these advances more widely available and to support continued innovation in cancer treatment. He closed his address by returning to the theme of hope. Charles emphasized that while cancer was a formidable opponent, human resilience, medical advancement, and mutual support were even more powerful. He spoke of looking forward to the future, to continuing his service, to seeing his grandchildren grow. The final moments of his address were perhaps the most powerful. Charles looked directly into the camera and spoke to fellow cancer patients with words that came clearly from the heart. He acknowledged their struggles, honored their courage, and expressed solidarity in their shared journey. He ended with a simple message of determination and hope that resonated long after the cameras stopped rolling. As the red light faded, Charles remained seated for a moment, emotionally drained but satisfied. He had done what he set out to do, broken his silence about his cancer diagnosis in a way that would inform, inspire, and bring people together. The immediate response from his team was overwhelmingly positive, but Charles knew the true impact would be measured in the lives touched and changed by his openness. The moments immediately following the broadcast were a whirlwind of activity. As Charles stepped away from the cameras, his private secretary approached with initial reactions flooding in from around the world. Social media platforms were ablaze with messages of support. News outlets were breaking the story with special reports, and cancer organizations were reporting unprecedented spikes in website traffic and helpline calls. The Palace Communications team had prepared for various scenarios, but the overwhelming positivity of the response exceeded all expectations. Within minutes, hashtags related to Charles's announcement were trending globally. People were sharing their own cancer stories, expressing gratitude for his honesty, and offering prayers and support from every corner of the earth. Charles retreated to his private study, needing a moment to process what had just occurred. His wife joined him, and they sat together in comfortable silence, understanding that something significant had shifted. The secret that had weighed so heavily was now shared with the world, and rather than feeling exposed, Charles felt a strange sense of liberation. The first official responses came from fellow world leaders. Presidents, prime ministers, and monarchs sent personal messages that went beyond diplomatic protocol. Many shared their own experiences with cancer in their families, creating an unexpected network of understanding among global leaders. The president of France called personally, speaking in English out of respect, sharing how his mother had battled cancer, and expressing admiration for Charles's courage. Medical professionals around the world responded with particular enthusiasm. Leading oncologists praised the accuracy and sensitivity of Charles's medical explanations. Cancer research organizations reported immediate increases in donations, with many donors specifically mentioning being inspired by the announcement. One research institute in America received its largest single donation in history from an anonymous donor who simply noted, "Inspired by courage at the highest level." The impact on cancer patients was immediate and profound. Hospital wards reported patients discussing the announcement, finding comfort in knowing they weren't alone in their struggle. Support groups incorporated Charles's words into their discussions. One patient in Manchester told reporters, "If he can face this with such dignity while the whole world watches, I can face my treatment with courage too." Healthcare providers noted a significant increase in appointments for cancer screenings. General practitioners reported fully booked schedules as people who had been postponing checkups finally took action. One London clinic recorded a 400% increase in prostate cancer screening requests within 48 hours of the announcement. Public health officials quickly mobilized to ensure healthcare systems could handle the increased demand. The announcement's impact extended beyond health concerns. Financial markets, often sensitive to uncertainty about leadership, remained remarkably stable. Analysts attributed this to the transparent and reassuring nature of Charles's address. His clear communication about maintaining duties while prioritizing health had prevented speculation and uncertainty. Charles's children each issued personal statements that reflected their individual personalities while maintaining family unity. His eldest son spoke of pride in his father's courage and pledged to take on additional duties as needed. His daughter announced new initiatives through her own charitable work to support cancer patients. Each message reinforced the family's commitment to supporting both Charles and the broader cause of cancer awareness. Religious leaders from various faiths offered prayers and support. The Archbishop of Canterbury held a special service attended by thousands. Islamic leaders organized prayer gatherings. Jewish rabbis incorporated healing prayers into their services. Hindu and Buddhist temples offered meditation sessions for those affected by cancer. This interfaith response demonstrated the universal nature of the health challenge Charles faced. The media response required careful management. While most coverage was respectful and supportive, the Palace communications team worked around the clock to correct misinformation and provide accurate updates. They established a dedicated website with resources for cancer patients, frequently asked questions about Charles's condition, and links to reputable cancer organizations. Charitable organizations experienced what they called the Charles effect. Cancer Research UK reported receiving more donations in 24 hours than they typically received in a month. Smaller, specialized cancer charities also benefited, with many reporting that donors mentioned being inspired to act by the announcement. Volunteer applications surged as people sought ways to contribute to the cause. The business community responded with unexpected generosity. Major corporations announced new funding for cancer research, improved employee support programs, and partnerships with cancer organizations. One tech giant announced it would provide free platform access to cancer research institutions. A pharmaceutical company accelerated its timeline for making a new cancer drug available in developing countries. Schools and universities incorporated Charles's announcement into their curricula. Medical schools used it as a case study in public health communication. Primary schools developed age-appropriate lessons about health and resilience. One university announced a new scholarship program for students pursuing cancer research, funded by an alumnus moved by Charles's address. The international medical community mobilized to share knowledge more effectively. Research institutions that had previously guarded their work began collaborating more openly. A consortium of cancer centers announced a new data-sharing initiative that would accelerate research progress. Scientists from competing laboratories found common cause in their shared mission. Charles himself, while recovering from the emotional intensity of the announcement, threw himself into the initiatives he had announced. Despite his medical teams urging to rest, he insisted on personally calling cancer patients who had written particularly moving letters. Each call was private and unrecorded, but recipients often shared how meaningful these conversations were. The Palace Gardens became a symbol of hope and renewal. Charles announced that a section would be dedicated to a healing garden for cancer patients and their families. The design incorporated input from horticultural therapy experts, cancer survivors, and healthcare providers. Plants were chosen for their therapeutic properties and symbolic meanings of hope and resilience. Artists and musicians responded with creative works inspired by the announcement. A renowned composer premiered a piece dedicated to cancer survivors. Visual artists created works that would be auctioned for cancer research. Writers published essays and poems exploring themes of illness, courage, and hope. The cultural response added another dimension to the global conversation about cancer. The announcement's impact on cancer policy was swift. Governments that had been considering healthcare cuts reversed course. New legislation was proposed to improve cancer care access and affordability. International health organizations used the moment to push for global standards in cancer treatment. The World Health Organization announced a new initiative inspired by Charles's call for international cooperation. Corporate policies regarding employee health began changing. Companies revised their sick leave policies to be more accommodating to those undergoing cancer treatment. Flexible working arrangements became more common. Some organizations introduced cancer leave as a specific category, recognizing the unique challenges of the disease. Human resources departments reported a cultural shift in how illness was discussed in the workplace. The scientific community experienced renewed energy and purpose. Young researchers who had been considering other fields were inspired to focus on oncology. Funding applications for cancer research increased dramatically. One prominent scientist who had been close to retirement decided to continue working, stating that Charles's announcement had reinvigorated his sense of mission. Support groups around the world reported increased attendance and new formations. Online communities flourished as people found connection in shared experience. The palace facilitated some of these connections, creating secure platforms where cancer patients could share their stories and support each other. Mental health professionals noted the positive impact of reducing stigma around cancer diagnosis. The announcement influenced popular culture in unexpected ways. Television shows incorporated cancer storylines with greater sensitivity. Documentaries about cancer research and patient experiences found larger audiences. Publishers reported increased interest in books about health, resilience, and medical advances. The entertainment industry recognized its role in shaping public understanding of cancer. Charles's treatment journey became a teaching opportunity. With his permission, his medical team shared certain aspects of his care that could benefit others. They published articles about treatment decision-making, managing side effects, and maintaining quality of life during cancer treatment. These insights, coming from the care of such a high-profile patient, carried particular weight in the medical community. The impact on cancer prevention efforts was significant. Public health campaigns that had struggled for attention suddenly found receptive audiences. Smoking cessation programs reported increased enrollment. Dietary and exercise initiatives gained new participants. Sun safety awareness improved dramatically. The announcement had created a teachable moment that health educators maximized. Technology companies accelerated development of cancer-related innovations. Apps for tracking symptoms and managing treatment schedules were refined and made freely available. Artificial intelligence researchers focused more resources on cancer detection and treatment planning. Telemedicine platforms improved their cancer care capabilities, inspired by the need to make specialized care more accessible. The diplomatic implications of the announcement were subtle but significant. Countries that had been reluctant to cooperate on health initiatives found common ground. International tensions eased slightly as leaders recognized shared human challenges. Cancer research became a safe area for collaboration, even between nations with strained relationships. Charles participated in his first post-announcement public engagement via video link from the palace. He joined a virtual meeting of cancer researchers, listening more than speaking, but offering encouragement and asking insightful questions. His visible engagement, despite obvious fatigue from treatment, inspired participants and demonstrated his genuine commitment to the cause. The economic impact of increased cancer awareness was carefully monitored. While healthcare systems faced increased demand, economists noted positive effect from early detection, preventing more expensive late-stage treatments. The boost to research funding was expected to yield economic benefits through innovations and job creation. Investment in healthcare infrastructure accelerated as governments recognized public support for such spending. Educational institutions established new programs inspired by the announcement. Medical schools created scholarships for students committed to oncology. Nursing programs expanded their cancer care curricula. Research universities launched interdisciplinary cancer research centers. Community colleges developed programs to train cancer care support workers. The educational response ensured a pipeline of future cancer care professionals. The announcement influenced architecture and design. Hospitals began redesigning cancer treatment centers to be more welcoming and less clinical. The healing garden concept Charles had introduced was adopted globally. Architects specializing in healthcare facilities reported increased demand for patient-centered designs. The physical spaces where cancer treatment occurred were reimagined to support healing beyond just medical intervention. Religious and spiritual communities developed new programs to support cancer patients. Meditation and prayer groups specifically for those affected by cancer formed in diverse communities. Chaplaincy programs in hospitals were expanded. The spiritual dimension of facing cancer, which Charles had touched on carefully in his announcement, became a more openly discussed aspect of comprehensive cancer care. The legal implications of the announcement were significant. Lawmakers proposed new protections for cancer patients against discrimination. Insurance regulations were reviewed to ensure better coverage for cancer treatment. Employment law evolved to better protect the rights of workers dealing with cancer. The announcement had created political will for changes that advocates had sought for years. Charles's openness about mental health support during cancer treatment had particular impact. Psychological services for cancer patients received increased funding and recognition. The integration of mental health support into standard cancer care protocols accelerated. Stigma around seeking psychological help during illness decreased measurably. Mental health professionals specializing in oncology psychology reported increased demand for their services. The announcement's influence on medical education was profound. Case studies based on Charles's communication strategy were developed for public health courses. Medical ethics classes discussed the balance between privacy and public benefit in health disclosures by public figures. Communication skills training for doctors incorporated lessons from the announcement's effectiveness. International development organizations refocused efforts on cancer care in low-resource settings. The stark inequalities in cancer treatment access that Charles had highlighted became a priority for global health initiatives. Technology transfer programs were established to bring advanced cancer treatments to developing nations. Training programs for healthcare workers in resource-limited settings were expanded. The cultural shift in how cancer was discussed extended to everyday conversations. Families found it easier to talk about cancer fears and experiences. Workplace discussions about health became more open. The vocabulary around cancer evolved to be more hopeful and less fatalistic. Linguists noted changes in how cancer was described in media and casual conversation. Charles received thousands of letters from cancer patients and survivors. A special team was assembled to ensure each received a response. Many letters contained profound insights about living with cancer, which Charles collected and later shared in a published compilation that raised funds for cancer research. The book became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to cancer charities. The first anniversary of the announcement was marked by global events celebrating progress in cancer research and treatment. Charles, showing visible improvement in his health, participated in several events. His appearance, looking stronger and more energetic, provided hope to current patients. He spoke of his ongoing journey with continued honesty, acknowledging good days and bad while maintaining optimism about the future. Scientific breakthroughs announced on the anniversary were attributed partly to the increased funding and collaboration sparked by Charles's announcement. A new immunotherapy treatment showed remarkable results in clinical trials. Early detection methods improved dramatically. International research collaborations yielded insights that individual institutions could not have achieved alone. The acceleration of progress was tangible and measurable. The long-term impact on public health policy became clear as governments worldwide increased healthcare budgets with specific allocations for cancer prevention and treatment. Universal healthcare systems strengthened their cancer care provisions. Countries without universal healthcare introduced new programs to ensure cancer treatment access. The political impossibility of reducing cancer care funding became evident as public expectations permanently shifted. Charles's influence extended to corporate governance as companies recognized the importance of executive health transparency. Board policies evolved to balance privacy with stakeholder awareness. Succession planning improved as organizations acknowledged the reality of health challenges among leadership. The corporate world learned from Charles's example that transparency, when handled well, strengthened rather than weakened leadership. The announcement's legacy in medical research was secured through new institutions and programs bearing Charles's name. However, he insisted these focus on collaboration rather than competition. Research centers were designed to share findings immediately rather than waiting for publication. A new model of open science in cancer research emerged, accelerating the pace of discovery. 2 years had passed since that momentous day when Charles first spoke to the nation about his cancer diagnosis. The world had watched his journey with intense interest, drawing inspiration from his resilience and openness. Now, as he prepared for another significant address, the atmosphere was markedly different from that first announcement. Where there had been uncertainty, there was now hope. Where there had been fear, there was now understanding. Charles stood in the same blue drawing room, but everything about him radiated a different energy. His complexion was healthier, his stance stronger, and his eyes carried the wisdom that comes from facing life's greatest challenges and emerging transformed. He had insisted on making this follow-up address from the same location, understanding the symbolic power of continuity and progress. The journey since his initial announcement had been far from smooth. There had been difficult days when treatment side effects left him exhausted and discouraged. There had been setbacks that tested his resolve and moments when the public nature of his battle felt overwhelming. Yet through it all, he had maintained his commitment to transparency, sharing both struggles and triumphs with remarkable candor. His medical team had become not just caregivers, but partners in a larger mission. Dr. Harrison, his lead oncologist, had worked with Charles to develop educational materials that explained cancer treatment in accessible terms. These resources, freely available online, have been downloaded millions of times in dozens of languages. The partnership between patient and medical team had become a model for patient-centered care. The treatment protocol Charles had undergone became a subject of intense medical interest, not because it was dramatically different from standard care, but because its careful documentation and Charles's public platform allowed for unprecedented patient education. Medical journals published detailed analyses with Charles's consent, helping other patients understand what to expect from similar treatments. The physical changes Charles experienced during treatment had been visible to the public, and he had chosen not to hide them. When he lost his hair during chemotherapy, he appeared at public events without disguise, normalizing the appearance changes that so many cancer patients experience. His openness helped countless patients feel less self-conscious about their own treatment-related changes. The support network that had formed around Charles extended far beyond his immediate family. Cancer survivors from around the world had created a global community, sharing their stories and supporting newcomers to the journey. Charles had participated in virtual meetings with these groups, listening more than speaking, learning from their experiences, and drawing strength from their courage. His work schedule had adapted to accommodate treatment, but Charles had remained remarkably active. He had pioneered new ways of fulfilling duties, using technology to participate in events when physical presence wasn't possible. This adaptation had inadvertently modernized many traditional practices, making them more accessible and inclusive for others facing health challenges. The initiatives announced in his original address had flourished beyond expectations. The research funding had already yielded promising results, with several new treatments entering clinical trials. The support programs for patients and families had helped thousands navigate their cancer journeys with better resources and less isolation. The international collaborations had broken down barriers that had hindered progress for decades. Charles's influence on cancer policy had been transformative. Legislation inspired by his announcement had passed in multiple countries, improving access to care and protecting patients' rights. Insurance companies had revised policies to provide better coverage for cancer treatment. Employers had implemented new standards for supporting employees with cancer, recognizing that accommodation and flexibility often allowed valuable workers to continue contributing while managing their health. The cultural shift in cancer awareness had persisted and deepened. Schools had integrated health education more comprehensively, ensuring young people understood cancer prevention and early detection. Media representation of cancer had become more nuanced and hopeful, moving away from tragedy narratives to stories of resilience and scientific progress. The language used to discuss cancer had evolved to be more empowering and less fatalistic. Charles's journey had coincided with remarkable advances in cancer treatment. Immunotherapies that had been experimental at the time of his diagnosis were now standard treatments. Precision medicine approaches had become more accessible, allowing treatments to be tailored to individual patients' genetic profiles. Early detection methods had improved dramatically, catching cancers at more treatable stages. The economic impact of the Charles effect on cancer research and treatment had been carefully studied. Economists calculated that the increased funding and accelerated research had advanced the field by an estimated 5 to 10 years. The human impact of this acceleration was immeasurable. Lives saved, suffering reduced, families kept whole. The return on investment in cancer research had never been clearer. Charles had used his platform to highlight stories of other cancer patients, ensuring the focus extended beyond his own experience. He regularly featured patients from different backgrounds, with different cancer types, at various stages of treatment. These stories humanized the disease and demonstrated that cancer affected everyone regardless of status, while also showing the universal nature of hope and human resilience. The international response had created new models of cooperation. Countries that rarely collaborated had found common ground in cancer research. Scientific data was shared more freely. Clinical trials were coordinated internationally, and breakthrough treatments were made available globally more quickly. The competitive nationalism that had sometimes hindered medical progress gave way to cooperative humanism. Charles's family had been profoundly affected by the journey. His children had become powerful advocates for cancer causes in their own right, each bringing their unique perspectives and platforms to the fight. His grandchildren, who had been young when he was diagnosed, had grown up with a deep understanding of health challenges and the importance of medical research. They represented a new generation that would carry forward the mission. The healing garden at the palace had become a place of pilgrimage for cancer patients and survivors. Designed with input from horticultural therapists and cancer survivors, it provided a peaceful space for reflection and hope. Charles often met with small groups of patients there, sharing quiet conversations away from media attention. The garden's influence had spread, with similar spaces created at hospitals and treatment centers worldwide. Medical education had been revolutionized partly due to the attention Charles brought to cancer care. Medical schools had revised curricula to emphasize patient communication, holistic care, and the psychological aspects of serious illness. Nursing programs had expanded their focus on compassionate care. A new generation of healthcare providers was being trained with a more comprehensive understanding of what patients needed beyond medical treatment. The research initiatives Charles had championed were yielding remarkable results. A breakthrough in early detection technology, developed by a consortium of institutions he had helped bring together, was saving lives by catching cancers before symptoms appeared. New treatment protocols that combined traditional and innovative approaches were showing unprecedented success rates. The pace of progress had accelerated dramatically. Charles's openness about the mental health aspects of cancer had normalized psychological support for patients. Therapy and counseling were no longer seen as signs of weakness, but as essential components of comprehensive cancer care. Support groups had proliferated both in person and online. The isolation that many cancer patients had previously experienced was significantly reduced. The business world had fundamentally changed its approach to employee health. Cancer was no longer a taboo subject in corporate settings. Companies competed to offer the best support programs for employees facing health challenges. Flexible working arrangements had become standard rather than exceptional. The recognition that supporting employees through health challenges was both humane and good business had become widespread. Technology had advanced rapidly in response to needs identified through Charles's initiatives. Artificial intelligence systems could now detect certain cancers from routine scans with remarkable accuracy. Apps help patients manage symptoms, track medications, and connect with support services. Telemedicine had evolved to provide specialized cancer consultations to patients in remote areas. Innovation was being driven by clearly identified patient needs. The diplomatic benefits of Charles's cancer journey had extended beyond health cooperation. The shared human experience of confronting mortality had created unexpected connections between leaders and nations. Health diplomacy had become a recognized tool for building international relationships. Cancer research collaborations had opened doors to broader scientific and cultural exchanges. Charles had published a book about his experience, with all proceeds going to cancer research. The book, written with characteristic thoughtfulness and honesty, had become a global bestseller. It provided comfort to patients, guidance to families, and insights to medical professionals. Translated into dozens of languages, it had become a standard gift for newly diagnosed patients in many countries. The anniversary events marking milestones in Charles's journey had become global moments of reflection and celebration. Cancer survivors shared their stories, researchers announced new breakthroughs, and communities came together to support those currently in treatment. These events had created a rhythm of hope and progress that sustained momentum for the cause. Charles's influence extended to unexpected areas. Architecture schools taught courses on designing healing spaces. Musicians composed works inspired by the journey from diagnosis to recovery. Filmmakers created documentaries that showed cancer journeys with new honesty and hope. The cultural response continued to evolve and deepened, creating a richer understanding of the human experience of illness and recovery. The long-term studies of the Charles effect showed sustained positive impact across multiple measures. Cancer survival rates had improved more rapidly than projected. Early detection rates had increased dramatically. Research funding remained at historically high levels. Perhaps most importantly, the fear and stigma associated with cancer had measurably decreased. The disease was no longer spoken of in whispers, but addressed with determination and hope. As Charles prepared for this new address, he reflected on how the journey had changed him. He had gained a profound appreciation for life's precious moments, a deeper empathy for others facing challenges, and an unshakable belief in the power of human resilience. He had learned that vulnerability could be a source of strength, and that sharing struggles could lighten them for everyone. The speech he was about to deliver would announce his transition to a new phase, from active treatment to survivorship. But more than that, it would celebrate the collective progress made in the fight against cancer. He would announce new initiatives, share success stories from around the world, and challenge everyone to maintain the momentum that had been building. Charles looked at the notes for his speech, but he knew the most important words would come from his heart. He would speak of gratitude for his medical team, for his family, for the millions who had sent support. He would speak of hope, not naive optimism, but hope grounded in scientific progress and human determination. He would speak of the future, a future where cancer was not a death sentence, but a treatable condition. The technical team signaled that they were ready. Charles took his position, straightened his tie, a gift from a young cancer survivor he had met, and prepared to address the world once more. This time, there was no tremor in his hands, no uncertainty in his voice. He had traveled through the valley of shadow and emerged into light, bringing millions along with him on the journey. As the cameras began rolling, Charles smiled. This was not an ending, but a beginning. The fight against cancer would continue, but it would be fought with new weapons, new hope, and new determination. His personal battle had become a global movement, and that movement was changing the world. The boy who had been taught that royalty meant service had found the ultimate way to serve by sharing his vulnerability and inspiring others to join in humanity's fight against one of its oldest enemies. The red light glowed, and Charles began to speak. His words would once again ripple across the globe, but this time they carried not just hope, but evidence of progress. He spoke of survival rates improving, of treatments becoming more effective and less harsh, of early detection saving lives. He spoke of the researchers working tirelessly, the healthcare workers providing compassionate care, the patients facing their diagnoses with courage. He announced new initiatives that would build on the progress made. A global cancer research network that would connect scientists in real time. An international fund to ensure cutting-edge treatments reach patients in developing nations. Educational programs to train the next generation of cancer researchers and caregivers. Each initiative had been carefully planned and fully funded, ready to launch immediately. Charles shared stories of remarkable individuals he had met on his journey. The child who had beaten leukemia and now wanted to become an oncologist. The researcher who had made a breakthrough while motivated by her father's cancer battle. The nurse who provided extraordinary care despite facing her own health challenges. These stories painted a picture of human determination and compassion that transcended individual struggles. He addressed those currently fighting cancer with words of encouragement and practical advice. He shared what had helped him through the darkest moments. The importance of accepting support, the value of maintaining hope without denying reality, the power of taking treatment one day at a time. His words carried the authority of lived experience and the compassion of shared struggle. As Charles concluded his address, he looked directly into the camera with eyes that had seen fear and found courage, that had faced mortality and chosen life. He thanked everyone who had been part of this journey, from world-renowned specialists to children who had sent hand-drawn get-well cards. He emphasized that while his platform had allowed him to shine a light on cancer, the real heroes were the millions fighting their battles with quiet courage every day. The final words of his address would be remembered and quoted for generations. He spoke of cancer not as an individual battle, but as a collective challenge requiring collective response. He called on everyone, regardless of their personal connection to cancer, to be part of the solution, whether through supporting research, helping a neighbor in treatment, or simply getting regular checkups. Everyone had a role to play. As the broadcast ended and the cameras switched off, Charles felt a profound sense of completion and continuation. He had broken his silence about cancer 2 years ago, and in doing so, had helped break the silence of millions. The journey was far from over, for him personally and for the global fight against cancer. But the path forward was clearer, brighter, and filled with more hope than ever before. The impact of Charles's openness would be studied and celebrated for decades to come. Medical historians would mark it as a turning point in cancer awareness and treatment. Sociologists would analyze how one person's vulnerability had created a global movement. Most importantly, cancer patients would continue to find strength in knowing they were not alone, that their struggle was seen and valued, and that hope was not just a word, but a reality backed by progress and human determination. Charles left the blue drawing room and walked into the garden where his family waited. They embraced him, understanding the significance of this moment. Together, they walked through the healing garden, now in full bloom, a living symbol of growth after pruning, beauty after harsh seasons, and life's incredible capacity to persist and flourish despite the greatest challenges. The future stretched before them, uncertain as all futures are, but bright with possibility and strengthened by the bonds forged in facing life's greatest tests together.